I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Welcome back, everyone, to another 2 episodes of Showtime's Kidding, starring your very favorite Jim Carrey.
Yes.
Episode 5 was called Episode 3101, and then Episode 6 was actually titled The Death of Phil. And when we say the death of Phil, we mean the death of Filipino Pickles. This has been a very interesting 2 episodes. The way we're going to break down these 2 episodes is we're going to go into both of them, but we also are going to have a very special segment called Jim Gems, where we relate a Jim Carrey movie to the themes of this week's 2 episodes, in addition to a very special news and gossip section that's going to be led by Belle. But before we begin, you guys, I would like to introduce you to my all-star panel. I'm your host, Mina Naidine. To my left, we have Belle Blankenship.
That's me.
Who is super prepared today. You came
Ready.
with the news and gossip. It's going to be a really exciting one.
Oh, yeah. I got lots for you guys today.
And to her left, we have D'Angelo Friday,
it's me.
who I am so eager to hear your thoughts on all of this, because you were staring at the screen, and I was just wondering, what is D'Angelo thinking this
Well, I tell
week?
you what, we're happy to have you back. That
I
seat's hot over there, all right?
Yes.
You handle it well.
So happy to be back, you guys.
Yes.
Let's get right into it with
All
episode
right.
3101,
Yes.
which is about Mr. Pickle's puppet time.
Yes.
Quite the tongue twister.
Yeah.
What did we think of this episode, and how the entire thing was basically a musical?
Right.
Once more, Mr.
Right.
Rogers style. A little eerie, a little weird.
Yeah.
What were y'all thinking about puppet time?
Yeah, I mean, obviously this was pretty reminiscent of the other, the liver surgery one, where, they do kind of have this musical number. However, I wasn't as big of a fan of this one as I would say on the other musical number. However, I do actually agree with what you were saying, D'Angelo, that it was kind of cool to just watch a full episode of Puppet Time, because every time we see it, it's just we get little snippets, or they'll kind of be filming it, but you're not really immersed in the actual Puppet Time world. So that actually was kind of a cool thing that they did, but it was just I don't know. There were parts where I thought, is this actually an episode, or is it kind of just is this a dream? And because he kept wanting Jill there, and it was kind of taking away from what was actually going on. We're is she actually is this actually an episode? So yeah, it was interesting for sure. I don't know what you would say.
I would say it's a change of pace type episode, because I feel like they put out the same points and progressed the story, but just in a different way. So it was creative in that way, and then them pulling out a full-scale Puppet Time episode, which is probably cool, I would imagine, on the creative side for them. But as a viewer, I think we were watching him, and it was is this gonna be the whole episode?
Yeah.
And I think I was with you, but I didn't hate it. I didn't dislike it, because we still got answers to our story. I just think it was impressive that it was obviously a kid's show, but still felt really eerie because of probably the topic.
Right.
And I think how they captured that was pretty cool.
I kind of agree with both of you guys. With what you were saying, Val, I kept thinking, is he high? Because, in the previous episodes, he was prescribed medical marijuana.
Right.
So I was is
Medical
this
tea.
some sort of trip? Is this, what is going on, really?
Yeah.
And then we finally realized that it is an episode of Mr. Pickle's Puppet Time.
Yeah.
I was very frustrated watching the beginning of it, because I didn't want to have to sit through another musical, which is really strange considering I love musicals. I love
Yeah.
Phantom of the Opera, Hairspray, any musical, I am there for it. But I just felt like it was getting really old, because they've already done this in the past.
Right.
I feel one is enough. You can
Yeah.
incorporate it, but it was just too much for me.
Yeah.
And then it felt so random. I mean, they brought in
Yes.
Ariana Grande,
Yes.
Yeah, that was
who
interesting.
plays Pickle Grande.
Right.
And I was what is this? And she is the Pickle Fairy of Hope. For whatever reason, the beautiful
yes.
Ariana Grande is here to bring hope.
Right.
Was that a surprise to you guys, to have Ariana as a cameo in this series? It was so random.
Yeah, I think, and actually, I do want to give a shout out in our live chat. Billie Jean Girl 24 also has the same concerns. She says, episode 5 was kind of weird, especially with Ariana Grande randomly showing up as a fairy. And I do have to agree. I mean, it's like fun because, you know, I'm sure everyone, you know, Ariana Grande fans were probably waiting to see this episode, kind of see what she's up to. But yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of the whole structure was a little weird. However, I will say I was really happy that Deidre finally got her place in the show, because even like season 1, she had been trying forever. She was just like, please let me do it. And then, you know, Seb's just like, you just designed the puppets, like you would never be good. So I thought that I did appreciate. I thought it was great that this was finally her moment, that she could come in and you know, kind of make a name for herself in the show, even though it would be the last show. So it's a little ironic. But yeah, I mean, it was cool to see Ariana Grande going back to that point. But I mean, was it totally necessary? Probably not.
Right.
Maybe it was just kind of to increase ratings. I don't really know, but
what is the crossover in the Venn diagram of Ariana Grande fans?
Yeah, and kidding.
Kidding fans.
That's true. So I don't know.
Spot right there in the middle of the Venn diagram.
Well, I mean, we already saw in the trailer that she's not going to be the only artist that we see make an appearance on these. So maybe that's just the thing. Yeah,
it's
I
like
thought it was cool. I don't have as strong emotions about it.
Yeah.
Do. I mean, it's a singing episode. Let's get someone in to sing who can sing really well.
Yeah.
And it's not like she didn't have to act. Really.
Yeah.
So I think she did her job. Yeah. It was okay.
Hey, that's positive.
Let's talk about the themes of divorce on this show.
Yes.
Because, you know, much like Mr. Rogers, and we have Belle, the Mr. Rogers fanatic right here in the house right now.
Right.
Much like Mr. Rogers, you know, Mr. Pickles touches on really intense themes and themes that you would think maybe you don't bring up to your kids.
Right.
But he's normalizing topics that are very heavy and these difficult conversations that need to be had with children.
Yeah.
One of them very directly tied to his personal life right now, divorce.
Yes.
Do you think the way this conversation played out on the show was the best tool to teach kids about divorce and how people can separate even when they love one another?
Yeah, I think it's just funny because when you watch both episodes back to back, you know, the divorce episode of him doing the Puppet Time show is like, it's very, you know, it shows in a very positive light, all good vibes. And then you instantly go to the next one. It's like, this was the biggest mistake he's ever made. It's kind of like in the last season when he made the big speech at Christmas. And, you know, that was wild, but it kind of just shows the direct effect. And I do actually think it is kind of, we actually had also on YouTube, we had a commenter, Alia Salomon. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. But she was also wondering kind of like why Showtime this go around has been releasing 2 episodes like back to back instead of just doing the one each time. And I do think this is kind of a good example of like, maybe it would have been kind of nice to have like a little break between the 2 to be like, okay, I want to sit on this Puppet Time episode and, you know, really think, is this a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Before I kind of jumped into like, oh, this was the worst thing he's ever done.
Right.
So to me, I thought it was a really kind of beautiful way to paint divorce. Because I think that really is, I mean, this is something so many children go through, but it's such a touchy subject. And it's really, I feel like that's got to be one of the hardest conversations to have.
Yeah.
So I actually loved and that he actually had Jill there to like be, and they're actually signing the divorce papers in like real time. So I thought it was a very neat way to do it instead of just like, okay, well, let's put something together and not having Jill there.
Right.
So yeah, it's unique.
It was. I mean, it fits into the show. Like, it was like a difficult watch. But I think that he didn't do or say anything wrong. Him personally. I think the whole Filipino Pickles thing, which we'll get into, that is not his responsibility, his position. That will probably fall on Deidre's like shoulders. But the actual episode was like positive. Kids are dealing with that, so to not talk about it is not setting them up for success. And it just kind of fits, and that's what we see people do in our world, like on social media all the time. Like people who are vulnerable are seen as more authentic. And so people are drawn to them more. So, like, I don't see what he's doing as that much different.
Yeah.
Totally. And, I mean, I thought it was interesting that he was being very transparent with his own personal life and shedding a spotlight on that to demonstrate a topic that other people might be going through.
Yeah.
So, like, just bringing that level of authenticity to a show for kids.
Right.
And additionally, like really tying in this topic of change.
Yeah.
You know, everything changes, nothing is permanent, and then contextualizing that and like really emphasizing what that means through like the use of trees and wood, it can like turn into paper, and you know, no, we no longer have the tree anymore, but we have this instead. And I think that was like an easier way for kids to understand the concept of change. Because I think when you're explaining things to kids, just having abstract concepts doesn't make sense to a kid. You know, you have to use like an example, like look at this, and like now it's this. So I loved like how the puppets were involved there. But there was some weird stuff in the beginning where I was like, this is not a show for kids right now with the puppets. Like, what was going on? I kept wondering, like, is there a combination of Mr. Pickle's thoughts about what's going on with the puppet show? It was so bizarre to me. Any final thoughts on the episode 310?
That's a mouthful. I think the only thing I would also add is I do think this was a pretty creative one, because we knew that Deidre was like about to lose her intellectual property with the characters from the last episode from her own divorce. So this was kind of, so we knew we were going to lose pretty much all the characters, and like Pickle Time would have to shut down. So I think, I mean, to me, although, you know, the episode itself wasn't my favorite, I think it, again, was like a very cool way to kind of, to show like this isn't necessarily a bad thing that the show is ending, because I feel like most shows when they end, you know, there is kind of this sense of nostalgia, but this one kind of just looks forward, and it's just like, you know, like going into the I don't know. I really loved that phrase that they kept bringing up. So yeah, I think it was just a kind of a nice way. I mean, it was a sad topic, but I think it was done really well.
So wait, is that a conclusive? I thought maybe they were just gonna like bring in different characters. Are they just gonna end Pickle Time? Was that clear?
I mean, that's what it seemed.
I wasn't sure about that until we get into the following episode, the death of Phil. That's when we really find like this whole world of Pickles falling apart. Because I didn't think it was conclusive. You know, it seemed.
So maybe not. Okay, I was thinking that this was like.
I mean, it's a good point. It's a good point. Maybe that's the thing we're gonna find out in the.
Because all the characters are now doing like the commercials and stuff. So I was like, well, I guess they're doing their own lives, these puppets. So
I felt like just,
but maybe not.
Yeah, just seeing like how these puppets were used in a very commercial fashion made me feel like. You have something like so beautiful and so great. It's just like completely tarnished because of our modern day society and advertising and just like wanting to sell things. I thought that was really funny.
I thought that was hilarious. Like how the episode ended, he's like changing the channels.
He's like,
he's
where we
going
are
into the I don't know, and he's like dipped into some like whatever the heck he
do
got
that
dipped
motion
in.
again.
Do it for the camera, D'Angelo.
Yes, thank you.
Well, that fits into the show for sure.
So we move on to the death of Phil. And I read the info about this episode before watching it, just seeing what the name of the title was, which is what I normally do when I watch an episode. And I was so excited because I thought, okay, we're really going to get some backstory about the loss of Phil, because I always think the flashbacks are super interesting in illustrating why Jim Carrey's character is the way that he is, why his relationship with Jill is the way it is. But then we find out, this is so morbid, why am I laughing? We find out that the death of Phil is actually not Phil, his son, but Phil short for Filipino Pickle.
Pickles,
What were your thoughts on that very odd twist?
I think this to me reminds me of also the voiceover. Was he Croatian? I thought I couldn't remember what country it was from. Okay, that's what I thought. But where it was kind of just this odd side plot that they kind of just decided to pursue. Which again, to me, I'm like, I don't know if that had to be here, but it was fun. So I kind of think, I mean, obviously this isn't a fun thing for Filipino Phil,
no, he's dead.
Because he's dead. But I do think and it was just, I guess it was kind of an odd way to, and even for Will to kind of connect the dots with his magic numbers, and it's actually on that boat. So I mean, I guess that's kind of the like everything happens for a reason, you know, kind of philosophy. But yeah, I mean, I do think it was great that I could totally understand everyone's anger on the boat, just because they're like, we have to say everything that you say. So it's like to them, it just was very selfish of, you know, Mr. Pickles to say this really controversial thing, you know, across the world. So yeah, I think at first I was like, hey, y'all need to stop hating on Mr. Pickles. But I was like, well, I get it, I think.
Well, I think it's more so a vindication because Deidre till the divorce thing happened, like it appeared she was doing a really good job. And so now it's just kind of like, oh, there are holes in your leadership, and would their father have done better? Like that's kind of the question that we're kind of getting. It's like maybe he'll even become in charge of again. Who knows?
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe that's for predictions. But so that was one thing, and then Will, seeing Will and like how it does seem like he hasn't been like. No one is really talking to him about how he feels about the divorce, and so he's like coping in his own way.
Yeah.
And now it's like happened, and like as great as they're handling it between maybe one another, they're not handling it well with their kid.
I'm just excited for Will because he's turning back time.
It's
The Fibonacci sequence.
The thing is, that could happen in this show. They do everything else.
I
so
know.
they have to see
I'm
it
like,
happen.
It's
it's
not out
possible.
of
It's
the
not out of
realm
the
of
way.
possibility,
Yeah.
which I love.
Yeah.
But like going back to like this whole concept of the death of Filipino pickles.
Yeah.
What I loved about it, I mean, obviously a very violent way to open
Sure.
the beginning of this episode. Really bizarre.
Yeah.
Filipino Pickles is basically, contractually obligated to repeat what.
Right.
Okay, but the logic on that makes no sense. If you know it's illegal,
Right. It seems
then why are you
like-
saying it?
So he said.
That's why it's hard for me to have empathy for him a little bit.
So the reason why he died is because Filipino Pickles said divorce is for the best. And some security guy is like, what? Divorce is for the best.
Right.
Divorce is illegal. They literally have like a whole SWAT team in the
On
Philippines.
the show.
coming
Take
to
him
the
out.
show
Right.
while the puppet is there. Take
Yeah.
Filipino Pickles and throw him off of the roof
Yeah.
to his death because he said divorce is for the best. Now, the person bearing the brunt of this terrible thing that's happened
Yeah.
is Jeff Pickles
Yeah.
because that's what he said.
Right.
And I just think it's so
Right.
interesting that, in order to keep things uniform across different countries, because Mr.
Yeah.
Pickles is a universal thing
A
at this
global-
point,
yeah.
that they are contractually obligated to repeat what someone in the U.S. would say
Yeah.
Right.
when some things are just not culturally universal.
Exactly.
Right.
Crazy.
And that's not a
Right.
culturally universal topic to talk
Yeah.
about divorce.
It was
Yeah.
honestly insane. I kept laughing, especially during the one-on-one interview he has on the 60-minute style
Yeah.
show,
Yeah.
where she's like, "Do you feel responsible for the death of Phil?" And
Oh,
he
yeah.
just
Yeah.
watch.
Oh, yeah.
That was a
we
good
watch him
little
unravel.
segue because
Yeah.
that was, because, and I kind of forgot too. I was like, oh, wait, we're not talking about Phil. We're talking about, Filipino Phil, I guess. But yeah, I thought, that was interesting too.
I also want to touch on the hate mail that Jeff Pickles receives as a result of his episode on divorce. Some people love the episode of divorce, but it's broken up a lot of families as well.
Yeah.
What do you think is the level of responsibility that someone like Jeff should take in his messaging? Do you think he's responsible for these
Yeah.
divorces? How much, if so?
Right.
What are your thoughts?
I think, I feel like Will said it in a very beautiful way. He kind of, because Jeff was really, hating on himself, and he was like, I've like ruined everything. Will's like, no, you just told the truth.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
the truth is hard to hear sometimes. And honestly, it's, even though, in the interview, she says he's now responsible for breaking up more families single-handedly than anyone ever. But in a way, it's like, well, maybe that sounds bad on the surface, but it's like that might mean less unhappy homes. Like that's kind of like the freedom now that
Yeah.
these people have taken.
I mean, how is it his fault? If you're in a happy marriage and he says you should have a divorce,
Yeah.
you're happy in
like
marriage.
your
You're
choice.
you're not tripping over that.
They
It was
were
just
already
more-
on the brink.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just a revelation
Yes.
of whatever else was
They needed
going on in
someone
that
to like
situation.
articulate it for them.
But there is
so.
a responsibility when you're on a show and you have
Sure.
a platform. But I don't think he said anything incorrect.
Yeah.
There's just
Yeah.
consequences.
Yeah.
I think things need to be prefaced, or people need to understand that his version of the truth isn't a universal truth for everybody to follow.
Yeah.
It's just people need to learn to take
Maybe they
messages
should have
that
said that
serve
in
them.
the episode.
Exactly.
Right,
That would
right.
have
Just a
been helpful.
clarification at the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Jeff wants to take responsibility for his actions by at least visiting the middle of the sea so he can give a sea burial to Filipino
Right.
Pickles. He takes Will, his son, with him.
Yeah.
And they embark on this journey to go and give a speech
Yep.
about Filipino Pickles.
Jesus.
And then this whole revolt / uprising on the ship happens with all of the other pickles who are in attendance.
Right.
What were your thoughts about that ship scene? Because that was half of the episode right there.
Yeah.
There's
And
a lot going
I
on.
know. I think it's just kind of another weird kind of side thing that they go on, because then we kind of get a little piece into what are all these guys going through, and we have the Japanese version's brother there, who, there's that whole thing, like his brother's now missing and he's trying to cope with that. And then Seb is, with the with the Swedish girl. So it was, it was definitely funny, and just kind of, I feel like a lot of times, and I think it kind of goes into this, even if you make a promise, it may not always, you really need to think about it, because they had all made these promises not to drink and, all these other things. And then this is like them they're coming out episode going crazy. So yeah, I think it was fun and kind of a little bit of humor that maybe the show needs every once in a while, because it gets so dark. But yeah, it went on a little long, I think. We probably could have gotten the gist of what's going on, but
yeah, I agree.
know.
I think the past 2 episodes are like that. It's like, this was a good, we get it, but you sat here for a little bit too long. You guys had a little bit too much fun.
Yeah,
I would
let's say
definitely
that.
say that I enjoyed the death of Phil,
More.
that episode, way more than the
too.
musical
Yeah.
number of
Yeah.
the episode about divorce.
Yeah.
But what I think is that it's really critical to have episodes that are, in my opinion, sleeper episodes, to provide
Yeah.
context for an episode that will be
For sure.
more
For sure.
enriching and entertaining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
good.
Let's also talk about the relationship between Seb and his daughter.
Yeah.
Because Deirdre doesn't feel like she gets any validation from her father.
Right.
Everything seems to be coded in some sort of insult compliment.
Yeah.
Do you think the relationship will ever transform?
I think eventually they might have a breakthrough. It's hard to say, because every time I think they will, then he kind of, it's like 1 step forward, 2 steps back. And it's even he did try in the helicopter to give her a compliment, even though, it was still, she was like, why are you qualifying it?
He's you did better than I expected.
Yeah, he's trying.
You would.
I know. So I think he hears what she's saying and her concerns, and I feel like at least his effort should stand for something to me.
Yeah,
That might be all we get.
It's weird, because the more she brings him back in, probably the more difficult it is for him to do that.
Yeah.
But he did say you did better than I thought you would,
Yeah.
which is
So I'm like,
a
well, there's
side-hand
something. Let's take
compliment.
it.
There's some light at the end of the
Yeah.
tunnel
Yeah.
there. And when I say light at the end of the tunnel, it's because we're about to talk about Jim Gems
Woo.
right now. Going into our special segment.
Yes.
Take it away, D'Angelo.
Yes, so with the Jim Jims, guys, as you know, we'll compare a Jim Carrey movie to the performances of these 2 episodes. And Mina kind of pitched this one today. It's
Yeah.
Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind, directed by Michael Gundry, right?
Yeah, Michael
Yeah.
Gondry.
Yeah, so that one's, I thought that was a cool one, because one, it's a dark and sad movie, just like these 2 episodes.
Yeah.
It is very dark. You
Yeah.
guys do not watch this on Valentine's Day unless you're you just want to feel
Yeah.
miserable.
Just need
and,
to cry.
Cry it
Yeah.
out. But this movie is essentially about a couple that was in love. Clementine, played by Kate Winslet, and Joel, played by Jim Carrey. And they're essentially going through a breakup. Clementine is trying to erase her memory of Jim Carrey's character by undergoing some procedure where all the memories are just zapped out of her brain.
Right.
When Joel, played by Jim Carrey, finds this out, he tries to undergo the same procedure, and the whole movie is kind of told in flashbacks of their love and then trying to forget about each other. And it just was really reminiscent of, kind of these last 2 episodes where they're talking about divorce, and it's super
Just tough
painful.
topics, yeah.
Yeah.
They have all these memories together, and there's a bond there that's no longer, even if they do love each other.
Yeah.
And just trying to move into the unknown.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite movies, you guys. It is super morbid and depressing, but it is so
Still a goodie.
beautiful. And I
It's
think
a good reference, too. I just
Yeah.
think, that just what you take away from that movie, I feel like more than anything is even when the relationship it ended, it's difficult to let go of the good things, you know what I mean, from a relationship. So it's
Right.
even though you moved on, just like with the divorce, they've moved on or potentially have moved on, but it was bad. It didn't end the way we wanted it to, but like there are still good things about this,
Yeah.
like that will keep me connected to you or anything like that. So I feel like you see
Definitely.
both of that in both of those.
And also, as I love Kate Winslet, but I also want to say props to Jim Carrey because even though
Yeah.
Jim Carrey is known for his comedic roles, I mean, especially with Sonic the Hedgehog
Yeah.
coming out this past weekend.
Yeah, the serious roles.
Yes.
He's come a long way.
really excels in
Yeah.
serious roles. I think he is much better in dramatic roles than he is
Wow.
in comedy, which is what he's
Hot
known
take.
for.
Hugely controversial.
That's my
I think
hot
he's just good
take.
at both.
I think
Leave
he
your
is-
comments below.
I think he is superb when it comes to dramatic
Okay.
roles, whether it's the Truman Show, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, even the show Kidding. He does so well because it
Yeah.
takes an understanding of comedy to understand drama,
Yeah.
and he does both so
Yeah.
well. But I prefer him in the
All
dramatic.
right, okay.
For sure. That's funny.
I like that.
Not to go into too much attention, but he had an
Yeah.
interview with one of the night show hosts, and like they
Right.
literally took all of his famous like goofy stuff and
Yeah.
he delivered it really seriously. And I was like, wow, like, he's just so
Wow.
talented.
That's
you know?
funny.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that was Steve the Colbert, the Tonight Show
Oh,
Colbert. So,
love
but that's a
that.
good
I
interview.
need to watch
Yeah,
that.
it's
Yeah.
good. You might
I-
appreciate
I
Well,
it.
educator.
Love
so.
that. Moving on to news and gossip.
Yay.
Belle Blankenship.
Yeah, that's me.
AfterBuzz TV News.
All right, so I have a story according to Billboard.com. So this past Friday, 2 days ago, you may have seen Ariana Grande share a black and white photo of her cozying up to Jim Carrey on the set, as you can see here. And then she captioned the photo saying Sunday at Show Kidding, which shows her in her winged costume as the Pickle Fairy of Hope.
Which you guys are fans of.
Right. And then Mariah Carey actually commented on Grande's photo with Carey saying, with my cousin Jim, who insists on misspelling our last name. And in July, Grande also shared another photo of her with Carey, just gushing about, how awesome it was working with him. It was a dream of an experience. And then on this photo, she writes, there aren't words. I've been staring at my screen and no words do this moment justice. Thankful for the most special experience of my life. Nothing is crazier than getting to work with and spend time with someone whom you've idolized and adored since before you could speak. So I thought that was, that was a really sweet thing of her to do.
Jim Carrey was probably
Yeah.
like, oh my
I
god,
know.
Ariana Grande. This is insane.
I listen to all your songs.
I love your music.
That was so cute.
Yeah, no,
yeah, so I
definitely
got it.
was nice to hear
Yeah.
good vocals on that entire
Oh,
episode.
yeah.
Of the show, 'cause
Singing,
I
That was
episode
nice
a little,
about it.
A little rough for me, but
Yeah.
I think she definitely provided some beautiful
For sure.
vocals. Let's get into some predictions,
Oh,
you guys.
yeah. Prediction.
Your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
Stuff is going down next week. We got another 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Interesting format that they've decided to do this.
Right.
What's gonna go down in the next 2 episodes or the rest of the season?
Yeah. So I think I had predicted last week about Will's magic book. And I had originally thought they were going to be kind of like all the places of kind of where Phil's body parts have gone, because the very first one was at that little boy's house with the eyes. And obviously I was wrong. Now they're kind of just numbers and whatever way the universe presents it to Will. But so I'm really interested to see kind of how that ends, and if he somehow both his parents are going to get back together. So that's what I'm hoping for, and it ends on a good note, but I don't know.
But was Phil an organ donor? Because in the last episode, they're like, was he? And that's
yeah.
what was so
Well, it's
confusing.
because they had said no, and then that's when Will discovered where she pulled the passports out.
Yeah.
That it turns
Yeah.
out he
donated out.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
I guess his dad maybe set it up to have it donated. Or I don't know how
Yeah.
it worked,
Yeah.
but
That was such a weird
yeah,
discovery.
that was crazy.
Yeah.
So I'm interested.
I
for
thought there
that.
was such a weird mix up there.
Yeah.
I think I pretty much already said it, but I think Seb will end up coming back in power and having a lot of say with Kidding. Maybe, I don't know if he's going to replace her, but we're going to see a lot more of him in that role again, because things are going crazy right now.
Yeah, I genuinely have no idea what to expect at this point.
Fair enough.
It would be cool if there was an element of fantasy that wasn't too trippy, where there is
Yeah.
a going back in time through this
Sure.
magic trick, but for
Yeah.
it to really be told in flashbacks. I really, really, really would like to see more flashbacks, because I think it really helps illustrate, these characters' arcs and where they were and where they are now and
Yeah.
how they're coping with
Yeah.
things. So I'd love to see that. And, you know, I'd love to see more of Jill's new boo. I kind of love him. He's so sweet. Yeah. We're not supposed to love him, but I love him. Anyway, with that being said, any final thoughts on this season so far?
No?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
We got it.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone who tuned in today and who joined us in the live chat. Please share your thoughts in the comments below of what you thought of the 2 episodes that we just discussed today. We love interacting with you, and we're going to be, you know, checking the comments every single week. You make the show great.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for tuning in. And where can everybody find you?
Yes, so I'm on Instagram. It is Bebenship, B as in Bell, EBENSHIP.
And I'm on Instagram as well. I'm D'Angelo, DEANJILO.
All right.
And I'm Mina Naidine. I just got a TikTok. Follow me at Mina Makes Magic. Download the app, guys. It is addictive. And we'll see you all next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.